Alright, so gonna begin a several part series on pruning. There's been a lot of questions and the one post that we put up with me, chopping somebody's branch at their house for a Master Gardener project has generated a lot of interest. So with that said, first thing with pruning is we want to look at our tools. So I've just got like a bucket that I keep my pruning tools in. In fact, I didn't do a very good job of that when we were moving, and I can't find one of my saws for the life of me. Anyway, so first thing for pruning is going to be shears. So you want just general hand shears. These are going to be cutting anything from just tiny little nubbins up to about 1/2 inch. Anything more than that, it's going to put a lot of strain on the tool, strain on your arm, and you're not going to make a clean cut. So pruning shears are like the biggest thing. I also like these tiny little trimmers. Occasionally, like, you'll get these little nubbins of branches. I don't know if you guys can see that. Like just tiny little branches here, and these work great. And they also double as like fruit picking in your garden. So they're great for cucumbers, zucchinis, melons, anything that has like a slightly woody stem. Next are the loppers, right? So these loppers, these are just like your regular standard loppers. You can get ones that will have extendable handles, and that gives you more force. And then you can also get ones that have ratchets, so that you can and they're great. I like those, but I just went with, just your regular standard cheaper pair of loppers. And then finally, you're gonna need some saws. So this is a bow saw, hence it's shaped kind of like a bow. I like bow saws for the fact that the blades tend to be pretty thin. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a pretty thin blade compared to this guy, which has a much thicker blade. I don't know if you can see that comparison, but it's substantially thicker. Anyway, bow saws are great. The problem is if you want to get in and cut something, the top part of the bow part of your saw often gets in the way. So they don't make ideal pruning tools. Whereas this guy can get in there and really get whatever you need. And they make all kinds of different saws. So there's folding saws, there's just like regular full tang saws where the blade extends all the way through the handle. There's big long ones, short ones like this. There's saws on poles. You can also get loppers on poles, which are awesome. I don't own any. So yeah, things to think about. Keep your tools sharp. Tools have to be sharp. So if the biggest thing with pruning and how people get diseases introduced are two ways. One is that their tools aren't sharp, so when they cut the branch, it will tear a little bit, and you'll have some of that bark exposed, and then that leads for disease to enter in. The other thing that people don't do very often, that they need to do more of, is sanitize. So this is just some H2O2, some hydrogen peroxide. So before you begin pruning, go ahead, spray all your tools down. I'm going to do that before I start trimming here. So hydrogen peroxide is great. You can get just like some hand sanitizer if you're in a bind, you need to go and prune right this minute. Hand sanitizer works great too. You can just wipe that on there. What else? Okay, so I'll talk about cuts. So a lot of people say 45 degrees. You have to do 45 degrees. 45 degrees is great, okay? But let's move you in a little closer here to this peach tree that you can see is massively overgrown. So 45 degrees. You cut 45 degrees here, well, that's gonna expose it to the elements, right? So if you cut, like if you wanted to cut 45 degrees here, that'd be great. Then no rain, nothing is gonna get down in there. So really that 45 degree rule really is more about cutting so that water is going to run off and run away against the cut instead of pooling and staying on it. What else do I need to talk about before I get started? Okay, you're cutting something bigger than half an inch, you use the loppers. You get to something bigger than an inch, you're going to want the saw. You might be able to get up to like 1.5 inches with the loppers, just depends on where you are, how big your loppers are, etc. So let's say I wanted to take this branch off right in here. So it's pretty good. It's almost 2 inches in diameter. And again, like I was mentioning before, with the sharpness of the tools, you don't want any ripping from the bark. So when you cut, and I'm not gonna take this branch off, I'm definitely gonna trim it down and I might take something off otherwise, but you want to, it's easier to explain with a branch that is a little more horizontal. Let's try getting over in here. Let me see if that works. Okay, so I hope you can see me. This branch here. So if I was gonna cut this branch off, I would first go about at least 6 inches away from the junction that I'm going to cut. So in this case, there's a branch right there, so but I would go somewhere right here, and I'd begin doing a cut underneath. It's called a back cut. So I'd begin cutting with the saw facing towards the sky, the teeth, and I'd cut about halfway through, and then I would move distal, so away from the main trunk of the tree, and then I would cut with the saw blades, the teeth facing down, cut all the way through, cut that whole branch off, and then I would go back to where I want to cut, and I would cut that branch off. Okay, here's the reason why I do that. So if you don't do that, the weight of the branch is going to rip and it's going to peel all of that bark right off, and it could start peeling right down the trunk. Boom, you've opened yourself up to all kinds of diseases and infections. No bueno. Yeah, so that's the big thing. Then you'll hear people talk about thinning cuts and heading cuts. What are those? Okay, so a thinning cut is where you take the branch all the way back to where it meets the branch that it is coming out of. So this whole thing would just disappear. Bam! That's a thinning cut. A heading cut is where you take the top part of the branch, like right here, and you would cut it off where you would want the branch to continue growing, and you in that direction. So if I cut this guy right here off, shink, okay, this branch is still going to grow up and this way. If I cut the branch off right here, which I wouldn't do, the branch would then continue to grow downwards. If I cut the branch off right here, then the branch is going to continue and to grow out this way. So it's super sunny out here, so I hope you can see all of that. Okay, as we're cutting, the first things that we're looking for are the 3 Ds. So dead, diseased, and damaged. So, how do you tell these different things? Okay, well, dead is kind of the first thing that you want to look at. So right here, I'm gonna try to get you up nice and close. Okay, do you see this little branch right there? Okay, this is dead. So I'm gonna go ahead and this will just get snipped right off. You can tell that it is a darker color. It feels different from the rest of the tree, and I don't know how to explain it other than I've touched hundreds of trees in hundreds of situations, and I know what a dead branch feels like. Again, this one, it's dead right here. There's no life in it. That's what you want to get rid of. So those are going to be your first cuts. So you get rid of all of the dead branches. Next, you're going to look for disease. I don't see any disease on this tree. Thank God. Like that's a wonderful thing. I don't see any disease on the rest of the trees in my orchard. Otherwise, I would take you right there and show you. So disease is, it could be like a black rot. It could be a fungus. It could be like there's a little peach pit up at the top. I don't know if you can see it, but it would look like a dried up pit of a peach or something, like growing right off of the trunk. It'd be all like knobby and hard. That's disease. So boom, once you cut that out, you want to take it back. Like, okay, so for instance, if this branch had disease and the disease was right here, I would want to go at least 1, 2, 3 buds or branches back towards the tree. Normally I would just take the whole thing off, but if it's a bigger branch, like let's say if it was this guy and the disease is up here, I'd go back 1, 2, 3, and then this guy, he's dead, so he's gonna come off. This guy's dead, so I'd probably just take it back to this branch that's coming out over here. So you want to make sure that you get good wood. Again, it is crucial, absolutely crucial, to disinfect your tool after you make a diseased cut. So that disease can spread all throughout the tree, and I've done that before in some apple trees. Sorry, Mom. Back when I was a teenager and didn't know a whole lot about pruning. So dead, diseased, and dying. So anything that is dying, that's actively dying, that's dead, diseased, and damaged. If it's broken, if it's snapped, if it's cracked at all, take that off. So those are the first 3 things that you're going to look for. Next, you want to look for overall shape. So as you can see, this tree, so my wife and I, we moved here this past fall. I don't know if any of these trees have ever been pruned. So we've got this peach tree, which is, I mean, phenomenal as far as just explosion, right? We've got this apple tree. Again, it's just bam, all over the place. Branches everywhere. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want our trees to be beautiful. You want to think of it as an umbrella or an upside down vase. So you want it to be open in the center. We want air to be able to pass through, to circulate. We want the sunlight to be able to drop down and hit all the lowest branches on the tree. And we want to keep that center of the tree open. We want to usually train like a leader or a modified leader, which is one main branch to kind of go up and either to veer out, or if it does go up the center, we want to make sure that nothing is interfering. Okay, and next we want to look at branches that are crossing each other. So any kind of branches that are crossing, we want to take those off. So I mean, goodness, everywhere. So like right here, we've got this little branch coming up. Boom, it's crossing and it's rubbing against there. Again, the reason why we want to take off crossing branches is because of rubbing. Rubbing will create friction on the bark. Bark wears away, and then it leads to disease and to infection. So crossing equals bad. Take that out. And then a lot of it is just kind of the shape that we want to get. So a lot of people are afraid of pruning their trees, but you should be pruning your trees every single year, regardless of if you prune them, just do it every year, right? So these trees, they will actually fruit more the more that you have pruned them, because more energy from the roots and the sapwood is able to go up and go into the fruiting bodies. All right, so that was way more than I was planning for part one, but I will be back.